Picking up some of the trail, some threads from the last time we met. I was pointing out to you that all of the great conflicts, all the near great conflicts, many areas that perhaps have never even been described as conflicts, can be seen not simply within the context and under the words that have always been used, such as between good and evil, right and wrong, true and false, but can be absolutely seen down at a very, very apparently physiological level. Of course, to some view, you'd probably think it was also psychologically connected. If there was such a thing, it would be. And that is the organism's tendency to stare and the need not to. There have been messages coming out to mankind forever and ever and ever, from apparently religious sources, now from apparently psychological sources, from treatises on how to wage warfare, seminars on how to think more clearly. And every damn one of them can be seen, once you get a grip on it, as a confrontation between the organism, that's individuals, and then organizations, nations, businesses, the institutions, fields of commerce, between the tendency for them to stare and the continuing need. Now, last time I didn't throw in an adjective, but there are two or three, and they are not necessarily coevally in existence. It is a continuing / periodical / spasmodic / need not to stare. I can tell you, as I did with the method and the promise, that if you continually use the look around method, that every time you went into a new area, from one room to another, from one state to another, internally and externally, if you would look around. And I told you about the left and the right, getting off the track for a second. Do you realize that people only look in three directions if you tell people really watch it? If you tell people to be careful at a railroad crossing, or if you tell people you're going out in the bushes now and some of you people may be shot, you got to be alert little troopers. You got to do your best. And what do people do? They'll look three ways. Not knowing life is hiding a twin. Nobody ever looks there. Oh, they say they will. And people say things like, always look behind you, except for those who say don't ever look behind you. But people do not. So a person can hear and perhaps even feel some validity already to the fact that you should not stare at times. But then you should notice it's almost impossible. It's not impossible to do, because I can give you a task. I can say for 5 minutes at 3:15 tomorrow, and for 3 minutes at 5:13 tomorrow afternoon, do not stare. I mean it. It's very serious. And it's possible for 3 minutes and for 5 minutes that you cannot stare. It's possible. It's possible. What's almost impossible is what? Apparently to remember to do so. And I'm going to let that glide us into wrapping up 2 or 3 areas, and I'm going to bring out to you a whole new piece of life's masterstroke. Part of my job, if you've noticed yet, is to sing the praises of that which people overlook, or to sing the praises of those things that life out in the city condemn. And here's a great one. This is looked at as a flaw. You can buy books and take courses to that will apparently have a remedial effect on this. But as always, something is askew. from a revolutionary viewpoint because a masterstroke that life uses on humanity. I always like to go through a little, not always, but sometimes I go through a little theatrics. Another piece of life's masterstroke, the great. We need some music to go da-da. Before I tell you what it is, how about several things have happened since the last time we met? I was talking to one or two of you, and several of you sent me notes. One person asked me, they started off just sort of talking, that they said they had noticed that with a group of people, apparently, the past can take on almost mystical qualities. And they said on the basis that since they'd been around here, that they could hear some of the people that had been around here with me longer, and just every now and then hear little bits and scraps of little tales and things that we did, or they seemed to be most of what they imagined. And it had taken on, just within a few years that somebody had been around here and around me longer than they had, that it almost was taking on a mythical aura. And that is a very proper observation. And it's not just here. It happened in any group. And I pointed out to the person, I said, yeah, that could be true. I can imagine it. As fast as they could tell me that, I could imagine that you would feel that way. That, boy, the kind of great things and times you missed for not getting here a few years earlier. But then I pointed out to the person, as we were just chatting for a second, I said, you do realize, though, that we just speak ordinarily. I'm not speaking really about people involved with this, but ordinarily people can then begin to remember with sort of a haze. Sort of like, I believe I've read that some of these would-be men's type provocative erotic photographs are made with, if I remember correctly, Vaseline spread around the edges of the lens so it has kind of this haze, and women look very seductive and apparently look better. Well, I know, I assume that's supposed to be the point. All right, that is something that recollections do. They can also do otherwise. But how many, this is not new with me by any means, but how many people remember the good old days? And if you were alive back in the days that they're now referring to as the good old days, they were just as mad and bitchy and crappy as everybody else. But now it's the good old days. Somebody wrote me a note also, and obviously the gist of the note was they thought it was something I had said more or less, and the basis of the question, I don't have it to read, but the basis of the question was, how could I say, or how could it be, since I said it, they were inferring, that the past has no connection to the present or the future. Now, I never did say that exactly, but I'll go ahead and take the question. It's not that there is no connection to the past. That's silly. But I guess it's time to get down to what I was going to give you, a new piece of life's masterstroke, a new way in which life, a weapon that it uses against everybody. Bad memory. It is a weapon that if life so chose, if life pushed it a little bit further, it could kill us all. Kill us all. So now let me tie into those several things I was bringing up. Someone observing that a group of people that are meeting together for some length of time, for whatever, although the example was here, and then somebody new comes in, and then they hear tales about, oh, how we got started and how things used to be, and they almost take on this mythical quality. Bad memory. We'll do it every time. Or the idea, as the person misquoted me, that's not the point, but if someone believing I said that the past is unconnected to the present. It's not that it's unconnected, but it's more like this, that if a person had even the slightest possibility of ever becoming my elusive friend, everybody remember that, my fictitious, reasonably insane man, which I guess nowadays I'd simply refer to as a would-be revolutionist. If there was such a person, that is somebody out in life, not somebody weird, not somebody necessarily involved with some kind of spooky organization like this, and weird people like you and I, but just a person out in life. If people are actually intelligent, if people are actually reasonable, logical, and insightful, as many people out there say they are, in the privacy of their own home, or in the safety of the public eye, if they were, then they would discount the past on this basis, I suggest to you, my friend. They would discount on this basis. That not that it's not connected to what's going on here, but my memory is so bad that I'm going to have to shelve the whole area of memory until I can find out how to control it and use it in some uniform, predictable manner. But of course, that's not what happens. Because part of the beauty of bad memory is that you can't realize, you can't remember that your memory is bad. And so my fictitious, reasonably insane man, my would-be revolutionist, cannot, out there in the city, come up with this correct from our viewpoint, from the viewpoint of trying to do something to make some change in your life down at the genetic level, cannot come up with what I just said. That is to realize that my memory is so disjointed, so unstable, so unreliable, so non-uniform, that until I can learn, if I ever can, until I can learn to handle, to control it, and to use it in a predictable manner, I'm just going to set aside. Not saying that it has no bearing on me, that it's not in some way connected, that it might not be useful. But as it is now, I can't do anything with it. That, of course, is not the way that I would describe all this, but I'm responding to a question, and I am tying it in for the time being to what I'm pointing out to you that life uses. Life can put out all sorts of information. That is, life itself can go away and think about things that are in our future. Or if you want it very simplistically, life can go away and think up the kinds of things that come out at the genetic human level as being the dream of secret information, whether it be with gods and UFOs, dead people, they die and in some way become enlightened. All of that idea, life can let information out. Let's assume, I'll make it even more simplistic, let's assume that there is this thing, quote, the truth, that many people will assume that all of you in some fashion at one time had faith in. That there is the truth somewhere and that you're on a quest looking for it, that is your job in life. If there was such the truth, do you realize that life can just let it pour right out, just let it flow out? God, who knows how? Billboards and TV shows, sitcoms, comic books. Because it will not do one bit of good as long as it can still rely on bad memory. At one time, I let Kyrute point out that everybody has heard the truth once, and it didn't seem to have much effect on them. And by the truth, I am not saying, or I wasn't letting Kyrute say that there was the objective, verbalizable, the truth, but that which to the individual would have been the truth. And I pointed out that it didn't seem to do much good. As long as life can depend upon the situation it has of man having bad memory, then everything is safe, because everything that is knowable is apparently from the past, including I learned from my experiences. And I have already pointed out that that's not so. I started out the first time and I pointed out in a, I guess was a fairly obtuse manner at the time, that people do not really learn from their mistakes and their experience, because if they did, they would have learned beforehand. That you can't learn after you've made a, quote, mistake, because it doesn't appear to be a mistake. If it was a mistake, you would have known it beforehand and you would not have done it, and therefore it would not have been an experience, and therefore it would not be true to say, well, I learned from my experiences or my mistakes. Those that could do so would not make, quote, mistakes. But now let me see if I can make it perhaps a little more simplistic or give you another view. How can you learn? How could you expect, if you're a reasonably intelligent, fictitiously insane, would-be revolutionist, strange person, how could you expect to ever learn from your experiences if indeed you just suddenly looked around and you saw the validity of that? You can depend upon getting a straight answer from an IRS agent more quickly than you can your own memory. And anyone who doesn't know that doesn't know much of anything. And yet, apparently, all stable city consciousness, although it's not analyzed this way, but you should hear what I'm saying, is based upon the belief that the past is stable. There's got to be that assumption. People must operate on that basis, or you couldn't go out and start your car. You wouldn't even try to go home tonight if you believed that, well, they probably moved my neighborhood. My house probably floated away. Or I'm not even going to bother to walk down to the parking lot, because I'm just sure my car probably got off and went to Chattanooga. It's always wanted to. There is a belief in the stability of the past. But if a person had any sort of perception that began to approach what they like to laughingly refer to as objective in the city, you would realize that your memory of the past is not uniform, it is not dependable, it is not stable, and you're walking on gilded splinters, you're walking on dangerous diamonds to believe that you can have any faith in your memory as it is. And nobody notices it. Now everybody notices that everyone's memory around them is faulty, because no two people can agree on any fucking thing. You can't agree, a husband and wife, two friends, two Smith and Jones in business. A week later, a day after something happens, well, you told the guy that he could send in the money. You told him that even though it was after the 15th, it would get him a 2% discount if he'd go ahead and get his check in by Monday. I didn't tell him that. I was sitting right here. I heard you tell him. You were on the phone, and I heard you tell him, because I looked at you, and I went, no, no, no. And the guy says, you're crazy. I didn't do that. In their sense, two would assume, reasonable people, successful businessmen, or husband and wife, sex mates, people that apparently love each other. I asked you this morning, would you please stop and buy some butter so I can make this? You didn't tell me that. I was standing right here when you went out the door, and I said, look, on the way home, will you get some butter? And you went, okay. You did not. Two people. Anyway, it's just obvious. But it's always a matter that other people are not paying attention. If you are going to attempt to be a would-be revolutionist, you have got to see that it is a master weapon in the way things are arranged, that everybody, it's not everybody else, it's everybody, has bad memory. Several of the things I brought up, let me go off on some side excursions for a second. One, the person they pointed out to me that they felt as though they had missed something great by not being here whenever this started, if it had a starting time. And then them musing how their impression of what had taken place prior to their arrival here had taken on a kind of mythical quality. You remember that I brought up? And I said that yes, and bad memory would be partly responsible. But there is also that makes the past, when it's remembered, take on a quality that is greater than what occurred. If it does not, it does not become history. That is, it is not remembered by a group of people. Well, I can hear that some of you catch a glimpse of that already. It is a fact, if it's going to make a history book, unless it's just filler that the guy has got to, it's just it's a publication of his doctoral. Other than filler, when it seems to be real history, important stuff that happened, if you had any ability to look around now, you could begin to get a sense of it, if I point out. At the time it happened, it wasn't all that important. Now, I don't care what it was. Now, you can say, all right, it was when when the king gave the British people 1066, whatever they call it. Or you can say when they started the American Revolution, when the Germans reached the outskirts of Leningrad. You can say, well, that had to be. It affected thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Lives were lost and all that. Sure, I know that. Well, I read it, just like you. But the way it is now in a history book, and I'm not going to stay on this, you either hear it or you don't. The way it is now in not only the history book, but in the consciousness of those who are tied to history. Those that would hear the siege of Leningrad, the way it affects their nervous system is greater than the event itself. Now, I'm not comparing somebody going, oh yeah, that's one of my favorite epochs in history. I'm not trying to compare that to any of you people are weak-minded. I'm not trying to compare that to the loss of hundreds of thousands of lives in Leningrad. It's not a quantitative or qualitative comparison. I'm just telling you that once something, if it is strong enough and it falls into the nervous system of a group of people and it becomes a piece of history, the effect it has now on the nervous system coming from the past is actually greater. Not in any sense that you can compare in a 3D world. That's just a word when you say greater. It's different. If greater is going to choke you for a second, it is different, but it's actually greater. But it's different than the event itself. That is a part of the whole of the past. That is a part of the cohesive effect of the past. That is part of the necessary use in civilization, as it is now, that life uses of the past. But it is likewise a part of the reason to do this, why you have got to free yourself from that. Because you're not dealing with something. You're not dealing with a thing. You're not even dealing when they say, all right, the event, and somebody points out an event. Somebody has brought it in a Christian nation, I guess, would say, all right, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ was an event. It was a turning point in history, and it's a turning point in my life. And it's no such thing to a revolutionist. It's not a thing. It's not even a verb anymore. It's hardly a noun anymore. A memory is not the same thing as whatever it was. And just because it's been 2,000 years ago, just because it's been 200 years ago, just because it has been 20 minutes ago, gives it no validity in the revolutionary sense. Nay, nay, contraire, Pierre. But that whole feeling that is in the genetic makeup of man, it's not psychological, it's not cultural, it is genetic. It is a part of the feeling of family. It's all related. It's the same thing that makes people go out in cemeteries and kneel down next to the headstone of their mother, their father, their great-great-great-grandfather that they never met, but they found his tombstone. And they don't go out there on some whim. They don't go out there. They're not psychologically deranged. People go out there, somebody that they've never met, and get down by the grave and cry and feel something. It is real. It is real. It is useless for the revolutionary, but it is real. There's nothing funny. They're not sick. They're not dumb. But that is what I'm trying to get you to see. It is tied in with the same thing as the belief in history, that events actually happened. They didn't happen. The belief that it's important. To the revolutionist, I guess the most dangerous aspect of it that I can put into words is the belief that there is something of value to be learned. And an aspect of that, of course, that you should realize is that not only does there seem to be something to be learned, there is a continuing nagging feeling with many people that the older it is, the more potentially important it is. So with all that going on, if you think that life just comes up to humanity and just slaps you around once or twice, see, you don't have stereo feelings yet, because life will set up one thing and it slaps you around like this, and then as your head goes back this way, it slaps you the other way. So it set up all of this, that the past is very important, and then gives you bad memory. It is a combination, the likes of which are very seldom seen this side of a midway, a rigged carny game. Life would make P.T. Barnum look like a snooker player. I'm talking about a straight snooker player, too. It will set up these arrangements. That it always appears that there is one thing going on. There is one way in which humanity, or you, is or are being pushed. And then there seems to be just almost the total milieu in which you are alive seems to be pushing you another way, whether you call it spiritual, psychological, cultural, economic. Always. Here's a great example. The past is of supreme importance. Pick up any book of aphorisms, and it's full. Probably the biggest section, or one of the biggest, is going to be love and memories. The past. And it will sing the praises of the past. And you can sit there and read it, and we're not here to laugh at people. You can sit there, you and other people, intelligent, ordinary people, and read odes to the past, and it'll bring tears to their eyes. And they'll wish that they lived in another time. They'll feel something, and they're feeling something genetically. It is real. But for a revolutionist, it is at the very least something that you should see immediately is unreliable. If you can't see that immediately what I tell you, that's a waste of time. There's just nothing to use. You can't deal with it. Just forget it. But if you can't do that, at least realize this. Life has wired you up to believe that there is a great importance to the past, but then all you've got to do is use the look around method for a second and realize that you suffer the world's worst case of bad memory. So what are you going to do? At the very least, you should say, well, I'll deal with memory when I get a lot better. Since I cannot rely on my memory as it is. There might be wonderful possibilities of things to learn through memory, but I personally, right now, am not capable of using it, if there is that possibility, because I can't remember. I argue with people over something that happened 2 hours ago, other people that I normally respect. And I will argue with them just a matter of minutes about what I told them to do or what they told me to do. So I believe I'll pass on memory for the time being, at the very least. Another aspect I wanted to point out of the person pointing out to me that they could see that a group of people almost, their memories of things that happen almost take on a mystical quality. Let's push that a little further. Why not? It's true with individuals. How else do you account for the myth of I? You have, thanks to bad memory and other things, but tonight I'm talking about bad memory in part, you now have, forget groups of people, you now have memories of you that have taken on mythical, forget whether mythical is synonymous with heroic, but it has taken on mythical qualities. How you suffered but how you were finally a brave little trooper when your mother did die, when your first two husbands did leave you, when you lost your business, when you thought you were dying, and it turns out you weren't. Just your general thing that somebody asks you, your child, or somebody you know, say, boy, my folks have told me stories about when you were younger that you must have been you were really something, I bet. And at least internally, if you don't go through this kind of shit, but internally, people go, ah, yes. And their memory of themselves has taken on an almost, although I know you wouldn't have used this word, many of you, but it's taken on almost a mythical quality. Ah, yes. I don't like to brag about it, but those 3 years I spent in the Merchant Marines, woo, the things I saw. Yeah, tell me. And they have to go, Remember, we're not talking when I say they, we ain't talking about they, we're talking about you. Well, I heard that one time you rode a motorcycle all the way to Rio. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I almost forgotten. It's been a few years now. You were just a little tight. Tell me about it. Oh, well, let's see. Where will I start? What kind of goddamn memory is that? Anybody that'd be dumb enough to try and ride a motorcycle to Rio. No offense to any of you who've ridden motorcycles on long trips since I've known you. Because I warned you before you did it. But at any rate, do you hear me? That these, and I don't mean just something like riding a motorcycle to Rio. It can be some little something. You're out on a date, and a woman says, or a woman or a man, says, have you ever been married? You're just making chit-chat, learning, what do you call it nowadays, feeling each other out, learning, getting in each other's space. He said, have you ever been married? And the other person goes, well, I don't like to talk about it. It's a myth. It's a story the past has taken on a mythical quality. Well, I don't like to. She died of leukemia. She ran off and left me. Whatever it is, the memory of you as an organization, as a group, the we's, the partnership, your memory of it has turned it into almost mythical proportions. Thanks to not your knowledge of myths and not your fascinating life, no. Thanks to the ever-popular, all-pervasive bad memory. Can any of you see also a direct link between any attempt to change and bad memory? Of life having people wired up to believe, to feel, not just believe, but to feel uncomfortable and as though I should change. I am not up to the benchmark. Can you see according to your view, I guess, a quite intriguing link pin, or perhaps we could call it disturbing from another view, between bad memory and all attempts to change? I'll give you a second. Just the possible connection between bad memory and any attempt to change. How about the obvious? If memory's too bad, how do you know that you've changed? If memory is too bad, how do you recall what it is you're trying to change from? Well, yes, just bring me a Shirley Temple. Oh, wow, did you quit drinking? The man can't remember. How can you change if you can't remember, if your memory is too bad? Now, of course, making crude examples. How about all attacks? How about all forms of criticism that anyone else can level at you? If indeed we can learn from our mistakes in the city, And if indeed people are here to help one another, and if indeed, as your friends and your family would tell you at the drop of their hat or yours, according to how dirty the floor is, that they, with some hesitation, but they will point out some of your flaws simply on the basis that I'm your friend and I'd like to help you. If that be true, let's just assume for a minute that that's true. Why is it that it does not help? Think of all the times you have, out of the goodness of your heart, tried to help your fellow man, if not close friends and family, by pointing out one of their egregious flaws, which for some reason they seem to be, or to which they seem to be oblivious. What happens? Do you ever get a thank you note? Do you ever hear from them anymore? Are they still speaking to you? And why? Now, if we were psychologists, which we're not, you know by nowadays that a psychologist could jump up and say, well, people resist criticism. People will deny the very things that they're properly accused of, whatever other terms they have. It is a simple fact, as you should know, that people will, the organism of a human tends to deny the validity of criticism. Does that mean that everyone in the world that criticizes you, let's start with that ever offered you any criticism, does that mean that all those people were living under some cloud of delusion, that they were verging on being, well, they'd have to be, I guess by psychiatric terms, verging at least on a psychosis to hallucinate to the point to accuse you of things that were completely invalid? Is that what that means? Everybody want a second think about that? That all of your relatives, everybody you've ever known, every woman you've ever gone with, every man you've ever gone with, every friend you ever had, that all of them, just in some way, because of the kind of, or who knows why, but all the people you've ever known, you seem to have attracted, you seem to end up with the kind of people that hallucinate to the point of criticizing you for things for which there is no basis. You want a second to think about that? All right, if that's true, then how is it, I got carried a step further with it, then how is it that everybody else in the world feels the same way, that they're unjustly criticized? Then that means that everybody in the world but you is verging on psychotic, that they're hallucinating. But of course, you're part of the ones that you also criticize some people. So that means that everybody in the world except everybody in the world is hallucinating. Do you follow that? That's the only possible answer, right? No, there's one more. Bad memory. That you can be justly accused, and you're not psychotic, they're not hallucinating, and you're not overly psychologically defensive. You simply, like everyone else, you have a bad memory. And you're offered criticism to help you, and you deny that you deserve such criticism. Why? It's not your fault. You're not crazy. You just got a bad memory. You can't remember that, yeah, I do that. Now try and put that together one more time with any ability, with any attempt to change. People will not only offer criticism, people will tell you how to cure yourself. Your mother told you all the time you was growing up. And if she didn't, probably every now and then your father would say, yeah, listen to her. And if they didn't do it, some teacher at school would do it. You didn't hear it the first time from Henny Youngman. When you kept telling them, it hurts when I do that, they said, don't do that. Just stop it. You just stop that right now, you naughty little person. They told you. You couldn't remember it. You'd come right back around and you'd ask again, it hurts when I do this. What should I do? And they'd tell you again, you don't remember it. Is it any wonder that there are some people roaming the face of the city that believe that everybody else is nuts? But let's look at it another way. Look at all the great, not near great, the great human stuff and things that are possible only thanks to bad memory. Surely I don't have to enumerate them. Surely I don't even have to name a one, do I? I covered it. All the great things that are possible only to humans in this 3D world. The things that only humans can savor. The experiences that only humans can apparently have. And think of all those that would not be possible were it not for a bad memory. You're not going to make me name any, are you? Think about it. All the great stuff. Surely you can think of it. All the great stuff. Well, all of you are not thinking good enough. I'll give you a hint, even if I don't go into it. Any attempted change. If it weren't for bad memory, who on Larry's beautiful planet would ever attempt to change the second time? Everybody would try it once. See? That is, if everybody was actually intelligent in the city, everybody, as they're driven to do, would try to change once. Maybe at that real early age, the first time that you said, oh, it hurts, and your mother says, don't do that. And you go, that's it. And you realize you couldn't stop doing that. Everyone in the city, everybody alive would try and change one time, were it not for bad memory. And that would be it. Anything other than that, you would have to be nutso. You would try one time and realize, this don't work. So look at all the great things that you would miss. Well, sure they repossessed this car, but I got a better job now, so hell. This time fuck a Ford, I'll just buy myself a Corvette. Oh, what's 5 marriages? 6 has always been my lucky number. A new diet book. That's what I'll do. I'll lose some weight. I don't know about you, but I, for one, when I go home tonight, I'm going to fall on my little knees and thank the gods for bad memory, because I just don't know where we'd all be. Other than that little joke, I do know, if were it not for a form of bad memory, why would I continue this? Unless there were a little gremlin somewhere saying, there'll be a better crowd of people show up someday. I believe some of them, their little ears are beginning to warm up, and I can tell that some are beginning to hear it. Really? Really? You think so? Don't anybody believe my memory is that bad, or that would give me the blues. I just have the ability to ignore the inevitable. It comes with a job. I shouldn't say I have the ability. It's not something I went out and trained for. It just seems to come with a position. Well, let's see if I can drag you a little bit higher, even into the oceanic supreme manifestation of staring, which is, I wish we had the music, da-da-dum, habit. That is the ultimate, from one view in the city, that is the ultimate of staring. It's habit itself. You have again a masterfully put together double-edged weapon in that life makes us, in a sense, depend upon habit to operate efficiently. Were it not for habit, the city would fall apart. You should know that. Were it not for habit and all of its manifestations, were it not for the ability, for instance, for you to go downstairs and get in your car and drive, and you drive 99% of the time out of just pure blind habit. Or if you're going out and take the subway and rapid transit to get to where you're going, you can walk, two of you can walk, you can talk to each other and almost not look where you're going. Or if you're by yourself, you can talk to yourself and not know. There is a very specific way and a correct way that I can point out that habit is of supreme use in the efficient operation of humanity. Habit also comes into play in what seems to be memory. The efficiency of habit, in one sense, is that you sort of remember what you know. Sort of. And the habit is that you do not question the flaws in it. You do not question the instability of it. You do not question the non-uniformity of memory. Whatever seems to be you, whatever seems to be your memories, whatever seems to be, all of these I'm using synonymously now to try and give you a range to choose from. It seems to be your ability to think is based solely upon habit. So you have habit, and then you have what appears to be the need, or at least the desire in people, to break out of habit. Another great conflict, what? Same old one, but here we go. Everything that people believe they're attempting to do could be seen ad hocly, could be described as being the struggle to free oneself to some degree from a present habit. The desire to get ahead, to break the habit of being a failure. But you can see the struggle between habit and the desire to break habit. I eat too much, I get overweight, that's my habit. I'd like to break my habit, therefore I read diet books. I think about going on a diet, I try and go on diets. I go on an average of 4.3 diets per year. I try to quit smoking, I try to quit drinking, I try to control my temper. It all would seem to be a struggle against habit. I am lazy, and I never get anywhere in life, and I'll start a job or I'll start a business and I'll give it up too soon. I should be more industrious. I should have more patience. So it seems to be a struggle internally and manifesting itself in behavior. For me, struggling against habits of which I disapprove. It is still a struggle between staring and not staring. And when it gets outside of areas that you may think, since last time, and 30 minutes tonight, that may be becoming, or may be obvious to you, it gets into areas that you would never think of. How about the class struggle? How about into economics? That there seems to be, as they would describe it, the struggle between the people, between workers and capital. Can you see that that's a struggle between staring and not staring? I was afraid not. Because if you had, I was going to even make it better and to show you they could be either way. The workers, a spokesman for the workers, the downtrodden, somewhere in life's body, raising up Marx Redu and New Age Ingalls And he begins to curse the suppression of the capitalists, the employers, the landowners, the moneyed. And he could describe them. Let us say that he heard my descriptions. He could say, you got it. And he could describe capital. You understand that I'm taking the old classic division of capital versus the workers. The capitalist, that is the ones with the money, that own the land, they own the resources, and everybody else has to work on salary. The capitalists are staring, greed, the bottom line, money, human feelings, decency, living wage, good food. They stare. It's only us workers who don't stare. We're alert. We see the need for change. We'll get out and we'll strike. We'll do things that will temporarily set us back economically, trying to look at the greater eventual good. But I could slap him around a little bit, get some of his neurals, and he could say this, or I could say it for him, just the opposite. The capitalists don't stare. They're always on the lookout for a fast buck. They'll never keep their attention where it belongs and where the problems are. They're always looking here and there. Where can I buy new property? Where can I start a new mine? What new business can I take? What new people can I step on for my own welfare? And it's only us workers who have the ability to stare at one goal, to keep it in mind, to march together to some good. See, I was going to do that if indeed you had even heard the first part. But I won't do that since you didn't seem to hear the first part. The struggles, all the way from good and evil, to capitalists and workers, to Republicans and Democrats, to fascists versus socialists, it can be seen as being a struggle between staring, the need, the tendency for an organism to stare. That is an organism, an individual, and an organism being a collection of individuals. The institutions, larger groups, will stare, and then the need not to. You could look at, and I can shift it on you if you get that good, or you learn to shift it on yourself. It does not invalidate it. It just shows you the limitations of 3D consciousness. But you could look at habit as being staring. You can look at it. I was drawing out that not completely perfect parallel, as always, between an animal such as a dog or a lion or a tiger, and then the lower parts of your circuitry. That by and large, the lower parts seem quite capable of operating in the mode of staring. Not all the time, but by and large you could say that if you're talking about the lower circuits, if we could isolate them, which I'm doing verbally, and talk about them on that basis, that the lower circuits seem to be structured, wired up, produced to operate, to stay in a staring mode. Much sleep, just much absolute staring. They move when they must move. They move in very measured, again I repeat, if we were able to talk about them in humans, in complete isolation, without any interference from the higher circuits. But they would be moving in very measured steps. You don't see a dog, you do not see a lion or a tiger doing a whole lot of getting up, and shuffling its feet, or crossing its legs, and shaking its... They are, by and large, either acting or not acting. They do not have the ability of the other part, the other possibility that humans have, that is, of either acting or thinking of acting. They're either acting or they're off duty. That is, they're staring. And I pointed out in one sense that sleep, as far as the lower circuits, could be seen as a kind of acute, stable staring. Nothing else is going on. They're not hungry. They're not threatened. they're not in any kind of defensive mode, take a nap. What else are you going to do? They don't watch TV. There's nothing to think about. They don't plan for tomorrow. They don't worry about yesterday. So if you don't have some reason to act, you can lay there and stare. You know, how long are you going to stare at a rock? How long you lay out there in the weeds and you can see 2 or 3 barley stalks? You know, how long are you going to lay there and stare? You know, why not take a nap? You could see habit. Now I'm going to try, if I can tell that any of you are following, I'm going to try to expand it some, but you can see just the world of habit as being staring. And on that basis, you ought to get some taste of why I started out using the term that the organism of man has the tendency to stare. That were it not for other complicating factors, that is, the higher circuits in man, then I certainly would not be even insinuating there was anything wrong with staring. Of course, the obvious is, if it were not for the higher circuits, you and I wouldn't be talking, because we couldn't talk, and I know all that. Thing is, do you know all that? But if we could isolate it, and if we were simply, if I could just go like that, and suddenly we were all nothing but our lower circuits, then I would not in any way say anything that would even sound as though it were an attack or raised any question about staring. They'd just be natural. We'd either be moving, acting in our own best interest, just those limited lower circuit needs, or you'd be staring, and very likely snoozing. But you'd at least be staring. That's it. There is nothing to think about. There are no actions to think about. You either act for your own good or you don't act. And you only act on those very limited number of needs to keep the lower circuits going. All right, everyone should realize that you depend on habit. Much of what goes on in city life is habit. And I'm not going to belabor that point tonight, but I'm going to point out to you that even in the midst of habit that would seem to be needed, if not absolutely necessary, for efficient operation of your life, within inside the general structure of that habit, you can shift a kind of infrastructure so that you may not interfere with the overall movement of some habit that's the most efficient way to work. But inside of that, you can be diddling with it. Such as, I'll start off simple. Lee. Assuming, let's say that you get out and run every morning, or jog, and assuming that you are lower red circuit sane enough, and in all other ways, that you have your own habit physically, the way you jog. And you get through each and every morning without breaking your ankle, tearing up your knees, and all that. In other words, you get up and you do whatever stretching, and you get out and you begin to hump it, and you run. And that's it. Inside, and that's habit. And let's say it's efficient. It's what I was trying to make you realize, that you do it efficiently for you. And you do it, and if you're ordinary, you run for an hour, and the hour when you get through and you come in and somebody say, oh, what did you think about for the hour you're running? Now, of course, thanks to bad memory, if you thought there was a prize or that you were going to look stupid, you go, oh, well, let's see. And almost, this is not true, but it's almost that you make it up. You certainly don't remember what you thought because you can't remember what you were thinking 20 seconds ago, 10 seconds ago. You can't remember what you were thinking when I just said that, when you went, yeah, I should know that. And that was when? 2 seconds ago. You can't remember. So don't tell me that shit. There's lack of memory, bad memory, and you're staring, but yet what I want you to see, that within the confines of us just talking about in isolation, you running an hour, that habit is the most efficient way to do it. Inside that structure, inside that envelope of habit, you can begin to fiddle with it, though. You can begin to do something such as you take up doing a specific or a set of specific mental exercises as you run. Or you can physically make some slight change, such as if you run and you notice that you normally run and you've got your fingers bent about like that, is you can make it a point until it becomes habit and becomes meaningless, that when I run, I'm going to turn my hands down like this, and I'm going to run just like this. And it's not enough to interfere with the habit of your the structure of you running. It doesn't really interfere. It's just some little small something. I'm going to, just to prove I can do it, I'm going to run with both my little fingers out, or one little finger out. And I'm going to put my tongue over my left cheek, and we'll keep it there for the first 2 miles, and we'll switch over to the other 2. You can do that. And it is not silly. It is not wasteful. But now let's get into a stronger area. Within the structure of you being or operating in some particular fashion, in some particular circumstance and habit, which is almost all-inclusive, how about this? It seems to be habit, and it seems to be one that you can't immediately break. There seems to be a dance going on of some kind of hostility going on between you and another person, maybe you and your sexual mate. And it seems to be the efficient way that you two get along right now. But inside of that, you can do what? Forget doing your little fingers like that. How about this? In the midst of it, and nobody knows it but you begin to be totally insincere about it. While the habit is that you are still what you've always been, that you can't seem to stop it, unless you're going to rely on bad memory, and bad memory says, well, you're making headway. But inside of that, you can do what? Forget doing your little fingers like that. How about this? In the midst of it, and nobody knows it but you begin to be totally insincere about it. While the habit is that you are still what you've always been, that you can't seem to stop it, unless you're going to rely on bad memory, and bad memory says, well, you're making headway. Things make you mad. Every afternoon, let's say. If not every morning and every afternoon, those of you who drive under certain conditions at certain hours, you are ready to be held over a fire, ready to be tied up, just because of traffic jams of sitting there from 30 to 45 minutes, morning after morning, afternoon after afternoon, dumbasses that have little wrecks, fender benders, God knows what, just traffic just stops, and it's just gridlock there on this great expressway that part of my taxes paid $5 billion for this whole stretch, and it just sits here, we don't move. Believe it or not, that is efficient. I don't mean the expressway, but your attitude, what's going on with you is efficient. That is the most efficient way that you're coping with that. Life wired you up that is your form of efficiency. It's habit. So rather than worrying about, just from one view, rather than worrying about, well, I should stop that, that's not doing me any good, you've got to have bad memory to believe that you can stop it. You've got to have bad memory to believe that you are getting better at it. But you could do this in the midst, that there you find yourself again, I am in the midst of habit. I'm in the midst of efficient habit. These damn bastards, everybody, they sit there in their car and they just stare straight ahead. They wouldn't know traffic can take off many times, and the people sitting over here won't even move. There you are, and you find yourself, you catch yourself doing it. Right in the midst of that habit, you can become just totally insincere. You can even begin to smile internally now. Shouldn't fool around with good righteous anger. No. Go ahead when you get mad, but then inside, smile and be insincere about it. It is a way in which you can interfere with what is an efficient manner for you, or you would not be doing it. Life would not have you wired up to be operating in that way, that all habit is efficient. But the super efficiency for someone attempting to do this is to, at the very least, diddle with the interest structure, that which apparently has no immediate effect on the total structure of the habit. Now see if you can let me pull you a bit higher with the triads. I'm not changing the subject to see if you can stay with it. I'd already pointed out to you that the only way that you can make any change is you got to find out where the third leg is, and that any situation is always shifting, and people do not see it. At least you take that, what little you made of it perhaps, as being too exotic. Let me point out that life itself does the same thing. And it does it in this way. Consider that there are the possibilities of the triad of what I have been calling them for a while now. C, D, and E. Inclinations, forces, winds, possibilities. The three legs. There is that which I can refer to as the E-pool. It is that which apparently is irrelevant to whatever the situation is perceived to be at line level consciousness. But for any change to occur, someone has got to go to the E-pool. Life itself must draw from the E-pool to make any change. Because if it did not do so, if it attempted to simply draw in energies from the initial two observable combatants, C and D, whoever it is, do you understand that nothing could happen? The energies that are possible, the combinations that are possible, are already being played out between those two. A husband and wife argue and argue and argue and argue, and assuming that one of them, that they don't go to the grave arguing together, the one time something seems to happen and one of them leaves the other one. And people are surprised, those that know them. Oh yeah, well, you know, they've been hating each other and cursing each other for 20 years, but geez, that's just not the kind of thing you expect at their age. They're 55 and she just got up one morning and left him. Just an ordinary mechanical, I say ordinary, I mean mechanical, that nobody involved had anything to do with it. For that change to take place, life itself had to draw from the E-pool, because what was already going on between those two, there was no energy that life could take that would make anything change. I want you to try and hear at the most ordinary, the most routine level in life. Life is continually having to draw from the E-pool, that which apparently is presently irrelevant to the situation between C and D, whoever it is, two individuals, two countries, two economic theories, two nations. It's got to draw from something that is apparently presently irrelevant to those two combatants, or no change is possible. Life itself has to do that. So who the hell do you think you are that you're exempt from it? That's what all this was leading up to. The very least is to take a lesson from life. If you want somebody to imitate, forget gurus, forget religious figures and gods and all that shit. Look at life. If you want to learn something, if you want to learn how to operate, see what life does, see what life has done to you. And then, as we say in the business, do it to somebody else. We don't say it in the business because we don't have a business. There is an E-pool. It is real. You can learn to see it. You can learn to smell it. You don't have any choice. Or you wouldn't know about it if you couldn't smell it or touch it or see it or etc. But there is an E-pool. To make any change, you have got to be able to draw on the E-pool. When it is you and some other combatant, you and some other idea, you and some other person, or then turn it to the internal state, that there is apparently the combatants or is a partnership within you. No change is possible, and people can't remember it But no change is possible when you're dealing only with the energies of the two initial combatants. When you got the two dancers, they're not going to go anywhere. You can't get them off the dance floor. You can't teach them a new dance. There is nothing possible. It's going on just as it's always gone on. You have an equation, let's say, for the sake of simplicity, that 2 and 2 is 4, and you don't like the product. I do not like 4. I don't like what's going on with me and my job, me and this other person. I don't like what's going on with me. I don't like my attitude. So there's two things put together I don't like, and they come out to be the 4, and let the 4 represent what you don't like. Can't you just see, just for a split second, that if you don't do something about the 2 and the 2, those two factors, you can wring your hands, you can pace the floor, you can read books, you can pierce yourself, you can pierce Lefebvre, and nothing will ever happen. You'll always have 4. You can reverse the 2s, you can do them linearly, you can do them vertically, you can change them into Arabic, you can change them into Hebrew, you can spell them out TWO, then you can go back, you can do one of them TWO and the other one the numerical figure. You can do anything you want to, and it's always 4. If there were any Frems in the city, the whole city, at some point along the history of their own nervous system would have gone, even without me, they would have gone, because life has said that, except nobody can remember it. For life to make changes, it continually draws upon the Ipu. When things apparently change in a city, and I'm not inclined not to drag out all the examples because they're everywhere. They're in little small segments that happen daily, and they're spread across what appears to be some epoch in history, some great upheaval that may have taken a decade or 2 or 3 years at least. When that happens, whether it appears from your viewpoint for the good or the bad at the time, or whatever your bad memory tells you now about history, whatever it was that happened that seemed to be of world-shaking significance, think back right quick. I'll give you a second. Do it while I'm talking, as a matter of fact. Apparently 2 things were going on, 2 countries, 2 conflicting possibilities, and then something seemed to set it off. And then historians in the city say things like, well, it was one little incident. One guy getting his foot run over by a carriage. One little person being shot at. One little treaty being broken. But look at it another way. The combatants, the ideas, the people, the cultures, the nations, whatever it was already set up. They'd been set up, according to history. They'd been set up. Everybody had been expecting it. But it took something to what? Set it off. What set it off? Something irrelevant. Something out of the Ipu. Life had to go somewhere else. Now, don't let irrelevant, me using that word, don't let that choke you. And you think, well, I can think of things that weren't irrelevant. Don't let that throw you. The combatants, 2 and 2 was already set up, and it was turning out 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. And history now of man will say, you're looking back at World War I, World War II, the crash of the American economy in the late 20s, anything. And history now says, all right, everything was in place. We should have known better. There was Cassandras here and there warning us, saying, watch out, it's going to happen. But they warned us for 2 or 3 years, and nothing happened. It was like these 2 great nations, these 2 possibilities poised at each other. And yeah, we should have listened, but we kind of grew, it's like somebody crying wolf. Do you understand? All they're describing is what I'm describing to you. It's if all you've got is the energies from the initial, the way it appears, the observable initial 2 combatants, nothing is going to happen. Life itself then has to draw from the Ipu. It brings in that which was irrelevant to the initial 2 combatants. And that's when change happens. The only way that an individual can make change happen in a lifetime is the same way. And people are not wired up to see it. They're not wired up to know about it. And even when they know about it, they forget it. If they hear it for a second, then they leave, and what happens? BM! If they ever think about it again, their memory of it is not what it was. You have got to learn, you've got to know that it's there to draw upon the Ipu. If you're going to make some change, you cannot depend upon the energies of the original two combatants. And forget now about you and somebody else. Say, you. I have tried for how many years to quit smoking? I have tried how many years to control my temper? I get so mad, I can tell I'm getting ulcers. It makes me sick. I run my women off. My children won't speak to me. Whatever the hell it is. You got to realize we're talking about combatants in you. A habit and then a desire to break a habit. There's something I continue to stare at, and I wish I could quit staring at it because circumstances seem to happen and I stare. I get mad. I want to change. If you did not suffer from bad memory, if you were not a dyed-in-the-wool city dweller, you would give up any faith whatsoever in known methods to change because you have tried them. If it were not for bad memories, I've already pointed out, you would have tried one time to change, and you'd gone, fuck this. I'm not going to waste the rest of my goddamn life doing this. It don't work. And that'd been it. I don't know where else to take you with that verbally because that doesn't happen. But if it did happen, do you realize that you would have tried one time to change? And you're surrounded. Apparently, everybody's saying, yes, possible. We all change. And you should change. You go out, I'll try it. And you try it one time, it'll take you all of 30 or 40 seconds. Maybe ask somebody, say, now, I tried so-and-so, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. You'd not only thought, well, fuck all this, you'd have thought, well, fuck all them. The whole world's nuts. Those people are idiots. It doesn't work. You can't do it. And then you'd look and you'd sit and realize, well, they don't either. And they're all like they're walking around listening to some drummer and they're staring right ahead. Yes, it does work. Yes, it does work. And it doesn't work. You would have known that. But what I'm trying to get you to see now is down to a scientific level. I'm telling you something that is not known. If you want to make change, you cannot do what you've done before. You can't even do what everybody else says can be done. You can't do what other people says works because they're wrong. All you got to do is look around. It doesn't work. Don't ever try. Anybody's got a book that says how to do so-and-so. You know that they can't do it, don't you? You don't know? You didn't know that? How to be a good person, how to be religious, how to be a better Christian, how to lose weight. Well, one I like, just pops up, to just show you what goes on in the city. I guess the greatest weight loss guru in our day and time is little Richard Simmons. And it turns out, and he's admitted it, there's no secret, somebody found out, and so he admitted it, that he had, like industrial strength, plastic surgery done himself. Even before they had this suction for fat, he went somewhere in Italy or somewhere, and they just chopped it off. And supposedly now he's nothing but a mass of scars, but he teaches, control your diet. Does anybody care? Does it stop him? He's a celebrity. Always a new book, new tapes. Him telling people to diet and exercise, and he wouldn't have had it cut off. Well, I was trying to ease up since some of you caught your breath when I said you realize anybody that has a book or says that they're teaching how to do something that they can't do it, and I saw several of you went, I didn't want to send somebody into cardiac arrest, so I was trying to bring a little humor there to ease up on you. If anyone has said that this is a way to do something, ignore it. If it worked once, it's too late. If it worked once, fine. But as soon as somebody named it, as soon as somebody described it, it lost all of its value. It's already slowed it down. It's brought it down to sub-transonic level. It is now no faster than the speed of words. If it's no faster than the speed of words, it cannot jump tall buildings in a single bound, and it cannot stop speeding bullets. It can't do anything except what? Support bad memory. It's like a concentration camp, and whatever you attempt to do, whatever other people have said will work, falls into the hands of bad memory. If you're going to make change, you have got to draw from the EPU. And I know when I started this 2 or 3 meetings ago, and there's some people that's heard this on and off, I'll keep coming back to over a period of more than weeks and months, that it still seems elusive to you. But when I approach it from this kind of view, you keep throwing in humor, and sometimes it just seems straight ahead that it seems to be obvious, why could you not struggle against bad memory and leave here and understand that anything that you attempt to change, and want to write me notes, write yourself notes, but write me notes about, well, I've had this problem now for 30 years, but boy, I'm glad I met you because I've tried this and I've tried this, and now I believe that you sort of insinuated that I might be on the right track when I tried so-and-so, so I went back and tried again. God damn, are you idiots? If I said something that you thought you had tried before, believe me, you misheard me. Just look at it that way. At the very least, or assume I'm wrong. Whatever you do, don't assume that I'm telling you to go back and do something that you did before. I am not. And if you think that it sounds like that, you're wrong. You have got to draw from the irrelevant. You have got to go ahead now in one lifetime, maybe in one heartbeat, maybe in one day, maybe in 1 hour. Is there you apparently are, you can see the combatants, you can see the problem. By combatants, you understand, I'm not continuing to mean two individuals or two entities. It can be two attitudes in you. It can be the partnership itself. You can see that. You can see the problem and the desire to get out of the problem. How about that way? But nothing you can do will work unless you go and draw from the e-pool, unless you bring in the irrelevant, that which apparently has no bearing upon this problem and the desire to escape the problem. Now, a few minutes ago, a lot of you heard this. Life itself has to do that. Much of you heard that. Well, yeah. How do you think you're exempt? But life does it on such a level and working at such a time frame that that's not the way it appears. And that history is always after the fact. Ordinary consciousness is always judging what happened after the fact. You've got to be able to do it before the fact. And the fact is, I have got the two combatants. I have got the status quo, the staring, and I've got the desire not to stare, the desire to change. So you've got that. If you believe that that is a great boon, that you can see that, that's nothing. Everybody sees that. Now you've got to look somewhere else. You've got to quit staring at what it seems to be the problem and the desire to change, because the answer is not there. It is never there. It can't be there. The energy is not there. Life could not do that. You've got to be able to look somewhere else, and it doesn't matter where, as long as it's not there. All you got to be able to do is look where it's irrelevant. All you got to be able to do is do something irrelevant. All you got to do is be able to feel something irrelevant about the situation, and then you've got that which a lot of you talk about, and a lot of you are going to get your britches shocked off. As I said last time, well, it's not exactly what I expected. I told you so. You won't have any complaint. But it is sort of like getting on, shall I say, a roller coaster for the first time. It's like holding on to the tail of a rocket being launched for the first time. Because it is not exactly what you expected, and apparently, in the beginning, it seems like it may be taking you somewhere like this whole thing's getting out of hand. But as I said, I give my guarantee, if any of you can ever bring yourself to do it, it'll all work out just fine, just fine. You'll have no complaint. You'll just be shocked. And you'll be smiling. And what seemed to be the problem that you wanted cured, if I suddenly jump out of the bush and say, well, to cure the problem, you're going to go, it's going to be a whole new level of bad memory, because you're going to go, problem. Now say, you know, so-and-so, you go, damn, yeah, I've forgotten about it. Now say, yeah, you were worried about 30 seconds ago. Only 30 seconds, gee whiz. How time flies when you're having fun, you know. I'll tell you one more thing. That life has been this way before. I don't mean that life has been this way. Life has been this way, as in somewhere. As in somewhere. That no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've apparently been, it doesn't matter. Life has been that way before. And an interesting thing is this. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave this somewhere in the same area as that everyone has a twin and life keeps it hidden. Life has been this way before. And life leaves trail markings that people can follow if you can find them. They're out there and you can see them if you ever find what I'm talking about. And some of you have been close. And don't think about mystical breadcrumbs from dead Indian spirits or something. I'm telling you that life has been this way before, wherever it is that you are. Life has been that way before, you would be going there. And life leaves what amounts to literally trail markings. And I'm not going to push it any further tonight, or if ever, I could make it sound, or if I talked about it much, I wouldn't have to make it. Many of you would go, aha, that's the kind of mystical stuff that I believed before I came here, and now you're finally relenting and admitting it's true. But I'm telling you, it leaves markings, and I could go ahead and say that what seems to be the great hunger that many people have, everybody has a little bit, but let us say that you people seem to have more than other people, that this hunger is to find the markings. That if I could find the right thing to begin to track it, it would lead me where I want to go. There are such markings. Because life is, no matter who you are, what you've done, where you've been, life has been this way before. So you are not in virgin territory. You are not out in the woods by yourself. You are not going, regardless of what Captain Kirk said, you are not going where no man had gone before. Life has been there before. And it left a trail. If you can find it. People can follow a person. Strike people. A person can follow particular trail markings if they can find them. Someone did write me or several people, I guess I'll end with that. They wanted to know from several nights ago, if you remember, I started to give you a little history of religion, and I said that I'd happened to had some information fell into my hands some years back, and I had no way to verify it, and I really had to make up my own translation, if you can figure that out, because no one knew what language it was in. But it seemed to be the fountainhead of all ordinarily perceived religions, and the best I could make out of it, as far as the name, the best I could translate, it seemed to be the stupid religion. And several of you wrote me notes, wanted to know if I was going to say more about it, so I guess I did not pursue all the information at hand. I just enough, I can only tell you that's the kind of guy I am, you know. My attention span is somewhere between 15 to 20 seconds. But I did look into the information once I made up my own translation so I could make some sense out of it. There was a few things that before I discarded the whole thing. But I did come up with this, apparently. You got to remember this, before recorded history as we know it. Well, I can tell you this, it was older than 5000 BC. But the parts that I went ahead and translated based upon my own made-up translation, I like that. I guess some of you are looking forward to hearing about the stupid religion, but I like using a translation I made up. I like that. I didn't know that until I said it myself. But the few of the things I did pull out that I can recall a little bit about this, the fountainhead, the genesis from which sprang all other religions. And I'm not going to tell you what part of the world this was either. It's not where you suspect. All right, there were several aspects that you might find to be of interest, I can recall. That you got to see that this was the germ, an original central core, the big daddy progenitor of all other small-time religions. Some of the aspects of this great stupid religion was that it told completely impossible closed system tales. And it spoke, the areas I read through, at any particular section of it, it either spoke to one area of circuits in man or the other, but it did it exclusively to one or the other at any particular time. And, of course, it demanded the impossible. It couldn't explain itself. And as opposed to the modern interpretations or beliefs in the fourth estate, it seemed to comfort the comfortable and afflict the afflicted. And the parts that I translated that satisfied me was enough. It seemed absolutely intent on running men in circles and then criticizing their gait. That's G-A-I-T. And supremo bono, the final indignity, the final aspect that made the stupid religion what it was. Above all, it tells tales that you should be able to hear now that we are speaking about the original religion. It tells tales with a straight face of creations that turn on and attack their creator. Paintings that spring off the wall and strangle artists. Music that leaps out of harpsichords, if not accordions. That's it. Without that, you've got no religion. And of course, as I'm pointing out to you, we would have no religion were it not for the stupid religion. I'm not sure I was dramatic and theatrical enough to emphasize the potency of the last part. The tales. You understand? That's the tale of religion. That's the tale of man's ordinary common sense belief that creations can turn on the Creator. And I've heard people wonder why the word hubris is even in the dictionary. Give me a break, Jake. Back already, eh? I've got an excursion I want you to do between now and the next time we meet. Is I want everyone that hasn't done it before, that is you and your people here and then the other fine cities to which these fine tapes arrive, is I want you twice to go out for a 30-minute walk in as private and safe a place as you can get. And what I want you to do is divide the walk up into roughly 3 10-minute segments. Thusly, I want you to start off in the first 10-minute segment, just walk at a nice clip that's comfortable for you, and what I want you to do is to try and walk with an overriding awareness in the beginning of the yellow circuit. And in the second 10 minutes to try and just let the walk continue, the same pace, the same flow. Try and walk it with an overriding, that is the supreme awareness then of what the blue circuits, whatever you can make out of that. And in the final 10 minutes, I think you can guess, can't you? The red circuits. To try and have the supreme, the overriding awareness while you're continuing the walk of the red circuits. I'm not going to say any more. Awareness. Feel.